Stop building inaccessible AI assisted apps. We're going to show you the secret sauce to making AI assisted apps accessible and usable for your users. Welcome back to the channel. Charles, where do we start with this?
Well, the way that we've built the app so far is that we've just been leisurely vibe coding without too much worry, right? We haven't really been thinking too much about accessibility. We tried a little bit last episode, but there's probably loads that's inaccessible at the moment. So I'm assuming that not everyone is an accessibility expert. So we need to bring an accessibility expert on board, don't we?
There's lots of trains of thought on how to do this and ways to get started. We've got and experimented a few different ways on how to do it. But one of the easiest ways is to add a skill or an instruction to your AI agent. So what you're seeing here is a really nice skill that you can add to your AI. You're effectively giving your AI an accessibility brain to say, go and do all of these accessibility checks and make sure the app that we are creating is accessible, usable, and not just AI slop, right? So how do we bring this into the AI, Charles?
Yeah, so first things first, I guess, this is something that's been publicly provided, so you don't want to just trust it. So we have actually downloaded the skill and checked it ourselves first to make sure that we're happy with it. And we are happy with it. So there are a couple of ways of getting it into your project. You could just download it and then you get a zip file that has a folder and some files inside that folder. So you can see from the file explorer what it has within it. Hardly any information. It's just some text, really. But the other way of doing it is to go through NPX or BunX or PNPM. With our app, we would be using NPX because we've been using NPM. So we can copy that, and then we go into Visual Studio Code, and then we'll make sure we have a new terminal window, and then we paste it in, and we press enter.
And we're in our project directory here, just to be clear, aren't we? So we've added this to our project directory. And for our viewers' sake, if you've never done this before, all we've done is gone and added effectively a markdown file. It's plain text. So you can see exactly what context we're trying to give our AI agent. So we do recommend that you check these skills out before you just kind of blindly add them, but it's really useful and it's going to make your workflow so much more smoother and easier and your apps that much more polished by doing this, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And so we've gone to install it and it said, okay, to proceed with installing skills. We said yes. And then it said that it can't find the accessibility engineer. And you can see that it's got an available skill of accessibility engineer, but it's not able to find it. So it's not going to work that way. So I've copied accessibility engineer as they've written it, and then hopefully it'll work that way. There we go.
There we go.
So now it's saying to us, so what do we want to install it for if we're installing it for other agents? Now, we're currently using GitHub Copilot, so we're covered for that. So the next thing they ask us is whether we want to use Symlink or whether we want to copy to all agents. So that basically means that if we choose Symlink, we will get one file in our folders, and then there'll be a link to other agents if other agents need to use it. If we do copy to all agents, then it means we'll have multiple copies of the same file across all of our agent folders. But we're just using GitHub Copilot and we haven't asked for any other agent folders, so it should be straightforward. So we just go ahead with the recommended. And then it's telling us what it's going to install, which is the accessibility engineer. Do we want to proceed? Yes, we do. And then install the find skills skill. So Josh, you've used this before. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, the way I understand this, and it could be wrong, but the way I understand it is the find skills skill helps AI find skills that should help with your project. So when you look at the skills repository that you've seen at the beginning of this terminal window, there was a whole bunch of other skills, and there could be some really useful ones in there that you might want to use. And that skill helps with finding these other skills. So there's a whole bunch of them in there that I find useful. I use in my kind of AI assisted development workflow. And, you know, being a lazy developer, it means I don't have to write all of these things myself. So it's very useful for me. So I believe that's how that works.
Yeah, and there's tons in there, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say that we would do for this one? Do we want any skills in the future?
I would say yes to that. I don't see any drawbacks to saying yes.
Okay, excellent. So it says installation complete, and I can see that we've got a difference here. We've got a green folder for .agents now. And so if we go into the skill, we've got some squiggly lines because it's saying that it should match the folder name. So maybe they need to fix that, or maybe that's absolutely fine. I don't know. But either way, this is our skill. And if we open up the preview, so I've just right clicked on the title and opened the preview, then it's much easier for us to read this, which is really important because we need to know what's it doing. So it's got the core principle and it talks about that. It's got the web content accessibility guidelines, compliance levels, which is important. Like it says, level AAA is the gold standard, but it's difficult to achieve for everything. So generally, you won't be trying to get gold standard for everything because you'll then detract from the user experience instead of improve it. But then it goes through different code examples as to how you can build accessibly. And this file is a really long file. And then it ends up with telling you basically a checklist of things that you should go through for accessibility. And then at the end, it talks about related resources. Now, Josh, I think this goes back to you saying about the find skills thing, because now it's saying related resources, skills. So then if it wanted to use one of these skills, it could then use find skills to get to it.
Yeah, that's right. So it starts to become a really kind of multifaceted kind of feature, which is really great. And it also means that, we have to put less effort in trying to figure out the best ways to develop and keep our apps accessible, which is really, really nice. So a really good way to kind of approach AI assisted development, particularly if you're not from this world, when there's a lot of kind of nuances. It's really nice. Shall we see how it can apply to our app and see that it does what all it needs to do?
Let's give it a go. Now, before we jump into that, I just wanted to make a comment on the models that are available now, because previously we were using Claude Opus 4.5. Last week, Claude Opus 4.6 was released, and so we're going to use that for this. You are welcome to follow along and use the same model. Just be aware that Claude Opus 4.6 uses a lot of tokens, so be prepared for that if you decide to use that one. But we have also been using other models, and generally, I would say experiment with the models and do some research on them and see what you like using. But things like Claude Opus 4.6 and the newly released GPT 5.3 codex are both apparently incredible at coding.
It's a really good point, isn't it? We touch on models quickly. And what I like about skills is it kind of removes a lot of the guesswork that AI sometimes has to do. So it makes the approach more repeatable and predictable when it comes to actually, finding out what it needs to do. So, yes, we're using Opus 4.6 here. It's incredibly powerful and it just knows a lot of stuff. But if you don't have access to it, you have a model that isn't new or a free model, it's probably going to perform quite well in this context because we are referencing a skill which is very clearly defined. So, yes, you're going to probably get better output from the newer models, but your output from the free or lower tier models isn't going to be bad.
Yeah. So, how do we call this skill?
So, there's two ways we can do this. We can just prompt to say, use this skill. Or if you want to be certain, you can use the hashtag symbol in your chat window and select it from there. And that way, it's going to actually select it. So you can see it there, file skill.markdown. We know it's going to reference this file. And what now? What prompt should we give this to make sure it's going to go and actually analyze our code and make sure that it's meeting all the accessibility criteria that's set out in that skill?
Well, you basically just ask it to do an accessibility audit, but although you would be asking it to do an accessibility audit, what do you really want to happen after that? You just want it to come back with some information in the chat, or do you want to do something else? My preference for this is I would usually get it to save that audit as a file in my document structure somewhere. What about you?
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I always like it to do the audit and give me an output in some sort of format so that I can then work through a list if there's a whole bunch of stuff or raise issues in GitHub and work from it there so that I can follow along. I can manage it in more bite-sized chunks rather than trying to kind of tackle everything at once and it maybe causing a few issues.
Okay, so let's try this then. I want you to perform an accessibility audit with the skill that I've provided, and I want you to save the findings in the docs folder as a markdown file. So then what I would usually do is once it's got all of that information together and it's saved our markdown file, is I would usually then have a fresh context with it and then ask it to take that markdown file and to split it into achievable chunks because it's probably going to come back with so much that if you gave it all to your agent and asked it to do the whole thing in one go, it's going to explode. It's going to use up too much context.
Exactly. And doing it that way is, again, allows us to use maybe models that aren't as expensive because it's very clear cut what the ask is versus trying to figure out what it needs to do. So multiple layers to this, but that's the general consensus of how to work with it. So AI has gone away. It took a good few minutes, albeit quicker than getting someone who's skilled in accessibility to run through it all. It's come back with some findings. Shall we review them and see what it says?
I'm going to right click on that markdown file and do open preview so it's easier for us to read. So it tells us what it's doing. It tells us that it audited these files. So that's really good. Gives us a summary so we can see that keyboard navigation is an issue and ARIA attributes are an issue as well. And then it says what's working well, which is really good to know because then we can see, well, when we've been vibe coding, what is our agent good at? So we don't have to worry about that so much in the future. So if we're looking at high priority things, one of them is that there's no skip to main content link. So like when you're tabbing through something, if you've got lots of things to tab through, you will often want a skip to main content link so that you can get straight to the content. You don't have to press tab hundreds of times. So that's what that's about. So it is actually a really important thing if you're a keyboard user.
Yeah, there's a lot in here, isn't there, which is quite a lot to digest. And I would recommend to our viewers when they're doing it is, take the time to read through this, understand what it's doing, because it's great that we're getting AI to do all of this, but the issue of accessibility is a real big one in the developer world, and it is something that should be taken seriously. We're both accessibility advocates, and it's good just to understand kind of what the train of thought is with this stuff. So even just take the time to do a bit of research on the standards and that kind of thing. It's really useful. But this document's fantastic. It's telling us exactly what we need to know. We've got some critical issues. I think we should go and fix them and, start working through this list. What do you reckon?
Yeah, that sounds good. So the side of the fence that I stand on with this is I want to know what's my context window. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, I'm at 40%. And Opus 4.6 is apparently much better with context windows. But in the past, you'd be looking at when you reach, say, 50, 55%, that's when it starts to degrade. Which is a really low percentage. For Opus 4.6 is apparently much better, and I can't remember the exact percentage. Maybe it's more like 70%. But I'm looking at this thinking, well, we're at 40%. That's quite high. I would just do a new context for it because this document that we've got written up is really comprehensive. So I don't think it needs to trawl all of our files again. It just needs to split the document up, hopefully.
Yeah.
But no doubt it will check some files anyway. So let's get into the prompt for this. Please can you split this document up into tasks that are achievable for Opus 4.6 within 50% of its context window? I want the tasks to be easily completed, so can I have a checklist somewhere? So I'd usually say something along the lines of that. I mean, I do vary it sometimes, but as long as you're getting it to split it up into tasks and those tasks make sense in terms of achievability, that's the most important thing.
Yeah. And it's going to go away and it's going to come back with a nice effectively build document for us now, and we can now use that as our kind of plan and implementation kind of steps, which is really nice.
All right, so it says that it's created 6 self-contained tasks, and as you can see from the table, it looks really clear and straightforward. So has it given us these tasks anywhere? Oh, well, of course, I'm looking at the audit at the moment. So we need to open up accessibility tasks, and then if we open up a preview of that, we can see what our tasks are. So this, of course, is going to immediately reference our accessibility audit because it needs to get to that to understand what it needs to do. And they've even put in a thing about how to use the checklist, which is quite nice.
Nice.
And they've even given us a prompt for this, which is incredible. So implement it as described in for task N. So the funny thing with this is that I usually do a prompt somewhat similar to this, but I don't say for task N. I just say for the next task so that then I can copy and paste it constantly. How do you do it?
Yeah, much the same, to be honest. Just tell it, do the next task or, next, depending how I'm feeling, how polite I'm feeling, it just depends. So, yeah, it's really cool how verbose these documents that get created are. And it just makes that friction to get into the endpoint a lot easier, doesn't it?
Yeah. And so I'm really happy with this. We'll create fresh context because we, of course, need to keep clearing this out, make sure that it's not got too much memory stored and that it's going to be able to do what we want. So, yeah, let's go back to that. Let's copy that and let's do it the way that it's asked us to do it, shall we? So I'll paste that in and then I'll copy the description. Actually, I'll copy the task number as well for task and then just paste that in there. And then good to go.
Yep, let's do it. That's it complete. After another few minutes, it's given us an output of the fixes and what it's changed. So that's really useful. So we can actually go and just verify that.
If I press tab, now it says skip to main content in the top left-hand corner of your screen. You should see that. And then that will mean that we can then skip straight to the content, which is the timesheets, and we don't have to go through the entire menu first. So it's working perfectly.
Perfect. So with a few prompts and the use of our AI assisted accessibility engineer, we've managed to fix some really critical, important accessibility issues to make sure that we are creating accessible apps in the age of AI. That's really nice and really good to see. Any other
Yep.
comments on that?
So I guess all that's left now is for me to create fresh context and then to run through the rest of the tasks, right? So yeah, thanks for watching and we hope you're really liking the series. And if there's anything in particular you want us to cover, just put it in the comments or message us on LinkedIn is absolutely fine. And yeah, I'm excited about what we're going to cover next because like this topic is just so huge and it's constantly evolving and you have to keep on top of it if you want to keep up to date with it. So please just follow our videos and we will do all of the hard research for you. We'll do all of the hard work and then we'll give you all of that just for free within a 20-minute video.
Sounds good. Until next time.